Back with us on the SportsMax Zone. So good to have you with us wherever you are watching us in 25 territories in the Caribbean. And of course, those of you watching us on Scene TV on our sister station in the United States and Canada. Well, Dalton Wint has bowed to the demand of the senior men's footballers in Jamaica to resign as General Secretary of the Jamaica Football Federation. The JFF President, Michael Ricketts, confirmed the decision on Tuesday during an interview with local radio station Nationwide News Network. Ricketts says he's concerned by the increasing incidence of players demanding the removal of JFF staff and officials.
I've cited, like that document says, incompetence. And for whatever reason, there seems to be a very strained relationship. Maybe justified, maybe not justified. But it is indeed unfortunate, and precedence is incorrect. Players making demands on staff and virtually giving mandate that staff members must go. But in the interest of the sport, in the interest of the own players, in the interest of this nation, Wint has decided to offer his resignation.
Recently, the senior women's footballers wrote to the JFF demanding the removal of the Vin Blaine-led coaching staff. But after clearing Blaine of damning allegations made against him by the players, the JFF was forced to employ a replacement after Blaine resigned. Ricketts was asked by his hosts about Wint's performance as General Secretary.
I think Dalton, like all of us, do have shortcomings. And my only problem with him is that over the period, I don't think he would have learned as quickly as I would have liked. But he was strident, he was loyal, he was committed to what he was doing. But like I've said, there could very well have been some shortcomings that he would have not with the level of urgency that I would have liked learned and would have been able to correct.
That's the president of the Jamaica Football Federation, Michael Ricketts, speaking to Turner Thomas on the Nationwide Produced program this morning, earlier on this Tuesday. So, Donald, the JFF president has spoken. He says that Dalton Wint, the headline for me, in 5 years as General Secretary, hadn't learned the rudiments of the job quickly enough. Your reaction to that?
I think it's ridiculous, George. I have a serious problem with him saying that because a couple of things. One, each time you are appointed as Gen Sec, the usual thing is a 2-year contract. He first got that contract in 2017, which makes me wonder how would they have been judged in the first 2 years of that contract, and why would it have been renewed? I have a serious issue with that, because if you're now saying that it took time to get acclimatized to the post of Gen Sec, what was that review process like the first 2 years? And why would it have been rewarded with another 2-year contract? If you're looking at those contracts, and if they had followed procedure, this would have been the second time that he would have been renewed as General Secretary. I don't understand it, George. It makes no sense to me. Hearing the excuse now doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Well, if you were to go by the math, he'd be in the third cycle, because
Exactly.
2017 to now with
So he
2019.
would have renewed twice.
Yeah, exactly. The president also made, we're going to come to that, the president also made heavy weather of how difficult it is to coordinate flights for players, especially in these times. And I want to hear your comment on that.
It's obviously true in terms of the difficulty that would take place, right? My problem with that is that how are you going to get by those difficulties? Because for Suriname, it was fine. They were able to get a chartered flight, not only for the players, but for their supporters in time for the game. They don't experience difficulties as well. My issue is that we always find the excuses. Always find the excuses to say, all right, we passed the buck so many times. How are you going to get by those difficulties? And I think the issue that the players do have as well is that there is an air of invincibility around several of our administrators when they do their jobs. You can't talk to them. There's a lot of arrogance there as well, that the players, when they look on, it rubs them the wrong way. And I am not surprised that they hit out. I think one of the players said that it was a matter of the straw breaking the camel's back, because this, as an individual event, just itemizing this by itself, you're saying that, okay, all right, fine, it's not a big deal. But these little things have been happening for such a long time, over an extended period of time, and the players obviously had enough.
All right, so the issue of the travel and the difficulty of the travel, and then Ricketts also mentioned the fact that there are 13 national teams that the federation has to handle. For me, I'm not taking any of those things as excuses, because it's not as if you took the job with the understanding that you would have 3 national teams to handle, and then that 3 ballooned to 13. And so the mental frame in which you are preparing to operate has suddenly had to be expanded, because the scope of work and the amount of work has increased significantly. That's not the case. You went into office with multiple national teams to handle, and in office you have to handle multiple national teams. That's not an excuse. The other thing about travel, I could dig and give him something to say, well, Suriname has a national airline. Yeah, Suriname Airways, which flies across multiple destinations. It goes to Port of Spain, goes to Miami, goes to wherever. So there's an advantage in that, a small advantage, or perhaps a significant advantage, because there is no national airline for Jamaica anymore. Caribbean Airlines exists, but we're a part of many states that have a stake there. And the fact is that what the Reggae Boys couldn't do with travel, Suriname could have done. But I'm saying the skill that it takes to coordinate, to look to anticipate the problem, that we are traveling in COVID times. This is a national football squad. This is not just this is not an entity that has no track record with travel agencies or travel companies. Jamaica, under the banner of football, would have booked hundreds of flights over time. It's not like an individual who hardly travels. What I'm saying is that the relationships that we have with our travel agents, and you and I know, it's not the individual. So it's not a case where Mr. Wint himself would have tried to be booking flights. Your travel agents book flights for us. But they're not magicians, although sometimes they are. You have to give them ample time to work out the details, all right? So you want to take player X from that part, and you want to connect him with the players in Y part of the world. You want to bring player Z to Y location to connect with the team collectively. All of those logistics. You work that out, and your travel agent gets enough time to work. So I'm saying I can't take any excuse for the lack of coordination in the travel, because it's not as if we are doing something that has never been done before, that nobody else is doing during COVID, because, the Nations League is happening and the CONCACAF CONBOL teams are playing in South America. They're being flown from all over the world to various parts, and they don't have the difficulties that the Jamaicans have.
But George, how feasible is it now, as you look specifically to this scenario, that the JFF or the administrators would have paid the money for that so-called chartered flight that they were going to be sharing with the Suriname team? How feasible was it that they had it, they paid for it, and Suriname just reneged on them? No,
but it is absolutely feasible. If I were the Suriname officials, I'd have told them yes. Then at the last moment, I would have told them no.
Even if they had paid for it?
But look, if it costs, if there is a 20% cost or a 25% or a 30% cost for late cancellation, so I'm going to have to pay them a premium on what they paid me because I only told them late. That's a small price to pay to give my team an advantage. If I were the Suriname officials, I would have, it's not downright sabotage, but it is soft sabotage. I would have done the same thing, because I don't want your boys to get there on time, and I want there to be ruption, as we would say in the streets. I want there to be turmoil, the standard English thing to say. I want there to be turmoil in the camps. I'll do just that. So you have to be in a position where you give your team the best route traveling.
But you know what's funny? Because then if you look at the bigger picture, you're like, so why are we asking our opponents for transportation from their country?
But that's the point I'm making. That's the point I'm making. And I was going to mention that to come to the point. Dalton Wint didn't suffer a sacked resignation, because that's what it is. When it is that in performing your job, you don't perform in a manner that satisfies key stakeholders, they ask for your resignation, and because of the weight of pressure brought by that request for you to resign, you then resign. It's a sacked resignation. It's not you just walking in and saying, you know what, I'm tired of this, I'm resigning. It's a different resignation. So Wint's sacked resignation, the reason fronted by Michael Ricketts was that the players asked for it. It's not that I, Michael Ricketts, in my position as president, was dissatisfied with the gentleman's performance.
I find that a little bit disturbing, because
that's the point.
He's blaming the players for holding the officials accountable, and he's the president. I don't understand that at all.
And this is a situation where, as the General Secretary of the Federation is like the CEO. Operationally, he's in charge of everything. Slightly different from CEO, but operationally, he's in charge of everything, hand on the wheel. Michael Ricketts is telling us that what Dalton Wint has done over time was not sufficient for him to suffer the fate of a sacked resignation, but it was the players' demand for him to leave. The players, as you've said, holding him to account, which made his position untenable. That's why he had to walk. If I were Dalton Wint, I'd be hopping mad, because it's not as if my employer is unhappy with me. It's just that a key stakeholder group served by my employers raised hell and threatened to boycott the football game. That is why I was forced out. He can go to an employment tribunal, Donald Oliver, and have a very good chance of winning significant damages for the way he was dismissed, because there's nothing to suggest that the JFF itself was dissatisfied with his performance. It's only because of the national embarrassment and everything else, and the players calling for his resignation, why he was forced to walk the plank in what I'm calling a sacked resignation.
Having said that, look at all that has happened, and this, of course, capping it all off. Doesn't he deserve the sack?
And there's another thing. So I'm happy you went there again. I'm happy you've hit the right note. The players, in their wisdom, recognized who they thought the problem man was. And clearly they don't think that this was an isolated incident where Mr. Wint had failed to discharge his duties in the most professional way possible. So they went after him. They were right to do so. His sacking, given all that has happened over time on the watch of Ricketts as president and Wint as General Secretary, you would be hard-pressed to believe that he didn't have, his decision was not warranted. But here's what I'm saying. Look at the detail now. I'm saying this. If it is that you come to a situation where an employee is separated from their job, the employee's evaluation has nothing in it to put the employee on job watch. In other words, watch yourself or else you'll go. Or the employee isn't of a mind that my job is on the line, I need to buck up based on what my superior's evaluation of me is. That's a different thing compared to now, when the players have justifiably wielded their power and caused Wint to resign. So I'm saying, based on the nature of the relationship between the JFF and Wint up to this point, it's not that the JFF had a problem with Wint, because I'm sure Wint will say, well, I didn't get any bad reviews. I wasn't fearing for my job before this. It was a situation where the president had read me the riot act before, and I was suspecting that had I not acted in the manner expected, that I'd be out of my job. It's only because the players intervened. So there are many nuances here. The fact of Wint being removed from his job and that being the right thing for the football program is one thing. But if I were Wint's attorney, I'd be rubbing my hands with glee, because I'd be heading to the Industrial Disputes Tribunal now, confident that I'd win a huge payout for my client, because his employer didn't have a record of disciplinary action or otherwise to warrant the pulling of the trigger and forcing the man to resign, because based on what we know, all was well between the JFF and Wint. It's just that the players saw things differently and wielded their power. That's why we are where we are today.
It's sad, because it also highlights the ineptitude of the Jamaica Football Federation in all of this. Because how could someone be making mistake after mistake like that, and would have rubbed the players the wrong way, that he would have had his contract renewed once, twice, and they had no indication. Like, it seems as if the president was just totally unaware of what exactly was happening, not only behind the scenes, but in terms of the mistakes that he would have made in the past. You remember that our youth team missed out on CONCACAF qualifiers, and the JFF was fined. Like, how did he survive that? And there are so many other instances.
You see, someone may be listening to us, and saying, "But George, why would he be going to a tribunal when he was sacked? When he resigned?" If you notice, hands up if you've seen the text of Dalton Wint's resignation. The fact is, if you notice how it has been framed, we understand that he will resign, is what the JFF itself is saying. So I'm saying the subtext, well, the substance rather, of his appeal to any tribunal is that I was forced out of my job, regardless of what the nomenclature is. I was forced out, which is why I said sacked resignation. I was forced to take this decision, against my will, obviously forced. So there is something. But as you say, the list of foul-ups, very, very long. And as the man in charge of day-to-day running of the federation, Dalton Wint can't escape responsibility. And I don't know in any place or in many places that there are tears being shed for the fact that he's no longer General Secretary.
A couple other points. Of course, before he took this post, he was president of the Manchester FA for quite a few years. We don't want to talk about Manchester football then and now. There are so many things that we can look on and say Manchester should have been further ahead. They've had quite a few talented players, but nothing out of the parish in terms of clubs. Nothing like that for years. Of course, there hasn't been a schoolboy football champion out of the parish as well. So you look at so many things there and wondering where's the grassroots program and how have they progressed over the years, even under his stewardship. So again, I have an issue, and another issue that I have, because the buck doesn't stop with Wint. It actually stops with his boss. I mean, where does he go from here? If he's presiding over all this and not even in his own mind he could say, you know what, this is substandard, you have to go, not holding those around him accountable, how can he also survive? I mean, he's done well in terms of facing the media, because I know a lot of individuals would have just moved past us and had no comment. And
well, I'm not giving him any credit for that. He had to.
Well,
no, he had to.
Fine.
Yeah, he had to face the media. And you asked the right question. As I said, the JFF and its president did not force Dalton Wint out. The players did. Dereliction of duty. The players did for Dalton Wint what the JFF ought to have done a long time ago. And we're looking at you, Mr. President. We're looking at you and we're saying, what a charmed life you lead. We go to the break. Back with more after these.
Want more content? Follow us on YouTube, subscribe to SportsMax on cable, and download the SportsMax app today.